Hi there, I'm Tom Spencer. This week on Central Texas Gardener, we jump into primetime planting with a focus on additions that attract beneficial pollinators. On tour, see how a small space gardener in Kyle reduced her lawn footprint with native plants. Daphne explains how to water your shrubs and makes her pick of the week. Trisha shows how to divide and plant nursery herbs. So let's get growing right here, right now.
Support for Central Texas Gardener comes from GeoGrowers, offering custom soil blends for lawns, gardens, xeriscaping, and organic landscaping supplies. More information at geogrowers.net.
What can you do on a small lot, especially when you're required to grow a percentage of lawn? See how this gardener in Kyle changed neighborhood perspectives with native plants and a reduced lawn footprint.
When Ida Bouillon moved to her new home, she wanted to downsize her garden and be closer to her intensive hours job.
I had a house over in the Dripping Springs area, had 1.5 acres, and I couldn't keep up with it. There was no way.
As a master naturalist and habitat steward, she went for native plants. Luckily, she had open ground for her selections.
It was dirt when I bought it.
Her HOA requires some lawn, but Ida whittled it to the minimum percentage in favor of mixed heights that support indigenous wildlife. She also chose plants that hang on in drought.
I had 100% natives up until last fall, and I wanted to plant roses when I first moved here, but I made a commitment to just plant natives because I wanted to show that you can have a lovely yard with just natives. And people walk by in the various different stages of evolution of the yard, and they say, "Oh, it's so pretty, it's really nice." And I say, "And it's all natives."
In the alleyway side, frog fruit carpets the ground under taller wildlife promoters. Frog fruit flowers attract multiple pollinators. Its leaves provide larval food for several butterflies.
I like the diversity. I like seeing a lot of different things. I like the butterflies and the hummingbirds, the native ones that come here with the native plants.
Eventually, Ida did bring in roses, but she selected hardy Texas superstar knockouts.
It's like those favorite things you have.
Ida doesn't give them any more care than their native companions. In the side yard, zoysia grass fulfills the turf requirement. To gently enclose this destination, Ida set up trellises that permit interaction with strolling neighbors. To embellish the trellises with vivid summer color, she went outside her native box with mandavillas that attract pollinators and hummingbirds. For rainfall catchment, she built a retaining wall with interlocking blocks. All plants, even natives, require water. Since needs vary, pair compatible specimens. Soil type and drainage matter too.
So to understand the requirements of the plants and put them in the right place, sun, shade, the kind of soil, does it need good drainage? Like I have a part that's a slope there, so I can put in some plants that need good drainage, even though my soils are a little bit clayey, on the clayey side, but it has good drainage. Maintaining a healthy environment, I guess it's kind of like people. If you maintain yourself in a healthy way and you eat well, you're going to be healthy. And if you allow yourself to get stressed and not sleep enough and not eat well, you're more likely to get sick. So by maintaining a healthy environment, which means you've got the soil that the plants like, you've got the amount of rain and when the rainfall is that the plants thrive on, you've got the temperatures that the plants like, then you're going to have a healthy yard.
Outside the back door, she rejected turf in this tiny spot. Instead, she built a patio of unmortared brick. Ida shields the fence with shrubby plants and understory perennials. A wild grapevine softens the lines of the house. At the street side of the house, Ida planned ongoing habitat diversity. She hasn't watered established plants for 5 years. In front, she blended textures, height, and plants that flower and berry. But even with wildlife food sources like native Barbados cherry, It's important to know what conditions suit each plant.
The natives, although do so well here, you have to understand that some like drier soil, some like moister soil. If it's in the sun, you can water it more than if it has more shade. So you can't just say, oh, I like this plant, oh, I'll just stick it anywhere and expect it to grow.
Aside from the wildlife habitat she's created, Ida's cut down on her garden workload. An afternoon a few times a year to prune replaces weekly mowing and edging. But the rewards keep on coming.
Now the thing with the natives is they don't all bloom and show up at the same time, but through the year you see the great variety of plants, little ones, tiny ones, and then of course the trees, too. But the diversity is phenomenal, and diversity is what keeps the habitat and the yard healthy. This is so maintenance-free, so low budget, it's incredible. I wanted to show that it could be done.
All right, we're back from our field trip to Kyle. Beautiful garden, thanks for sharing it with us. I'm now visiting with Crystal Murray from Far South Nursery, a wholesale operation here in Austin that's growing a lot of cool plants. Our topic today, Crystal, is plants for pollinators. And why is it important that we put things out in our garden for pollinators?
Well, the pollinators are there to produce fruit. It's our food source. They're really important in our environment.
Yeah, a critical piece of the food growing operation. In fact, a lot of people have been worried about the bee populations in recent years, for example. A crash in bee populations has had a huge impact on our agriculture. So obviously these things matter. And you're growing a lot of things at Far South Nursery that are unique to the nursery trade, and lots of cool natives as well as some really well-adapted introduced species. I want to start off by talking about Barbados cherry. I've never seen a specimen like you've brought in here. This is the prettiest Barbados cherry I think I've ever seen in my life. Tell me about this plant.
Well, it's available in standard and dwarf varieties. The standard will get to be about 8 feet tall by 4 feet wide. The dwarf will be about 4 by 4. As you can see, it has these beautiful pink flowers that are followed by a red fruit that is high in vitamin C. It's attractive to birds. It's also edible but pretty tart.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely stunning display here on this particular specimen. And fall's the time for the bloom, right?
Right. It will bloom from spring through fall, but intermittently.
Okay. And what kind of growing conditions does it like?
It can handle sun or part shade. It is native to South Texas, so it's only going to be evergreen to about 20 degrees. So you need to be careful where you plant it.
Okay. Plants to 20 degrees are getting more and more common here in the Austin area as the weather changes.
Yes, things are changing.
Well, another plant that you've brought in, and this is one that looks like it could be incredibly useful in the landscape, is creeping germander. And everybody loves silver foliage plants. And here's one that is tidy, tight, and looks like it would do great in full sun. Right,
it's low growing, deer resistant. It gets little pink blooms that the bees are attracted to. When you crush it, it smells like bubble gum. I really like it.
Okay, hold on a second here. Let's see. You're absolutely right. Not quite like, the bubble gum that you remember from your kid, but close.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. And a beautiful plant, and one that I could see used in lots of different ways here in the Austin area. Good drainage is key, it looks like.
Definitely.
Yeah. Just from the look of this, whenever I see silver foliage, I always think add granite to the soil. Exactly. Yeah, right. Very good. Well, next up, one of my all-time favorite plants, blue-eyed grass. Yeah. And I understand this is actually an iris, or in the iris family.
That's correct. It's one of my favorite ground covers. I kind of feel like it's underutilized. It's in the iris family. Low growing, you can see about how tall it's going to get. Yeah,
here's pop up here, right?
Yeah, but the best part of that one is that in the spring it's going to be covered with a sea of these periwinkle blue star-shaped flowers that are very attractive to bees.
Bees love them, huh? So well,
right.
And again, just tough as nails little plant. You see it growing out in cemeteries and in wild places all the time. Completely unaided by us, so very well adapted plant for our area.
Yes.
Full sun again, I would imagine.
Sun, part shade.
Okay, all right, so pretty adaptable that way as well. The next up is a form of a butylon, And this is
Yes.
one I'm not familiar with at all. Is this a native?
It is not native to
Okay.
Texas. It's native to the Southwest.
Okay.
It's also called Indian mallow.
Mm-hmm.
It is, you can tell it has this really great silvery foliage that's really
and it's
soft.
soft.
Yeah,
very
velvety,
soft, right?
It gets these beautiful golden yellow mallow type blooms that are attracted to bees and butterflies.
Yeah. Well, the one that's in bloom has got that gold color really pops against that kind of gray-green. I think it's a great
Yeah.
combination.
Yeah, it can get to be about 5 feet tall. You're going to probably want to cut it back a little bit to keep it nice and
Tiny.
dense. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, it looks like it, just a little bit of shearing is all it would take, though. And
Right.
beautiful plant. Again, looking at the foliage here, I'm guessing, and of course, native to the Southwest, I'm thinking very well drained soils and full sun.
Exactly.
Okay.
It is deer resistant. It's only cold hardy to about 25 degrees, so you need to be careful where you keep it. It's great for pots. You could have it in the background of a garden, or you could just treat it as an annual and let it reseed.
Yeah, and it looks like it probably, whenever it's warm, it's going to be in bloom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All summer long.
Gray golden aster is our next plant. I love the asters. We have lots of purple varieties of aster, but I'm less familiar with the golden ones. And this is a very attractive, dense little plant as well.
Yeah, I love this one. This is one we are just starting to grow. It's native to the hill country. It's going to be forming a silvery mound that only gets to be about 1 foot tall.
Perfect.
Perfect, yeah. It's attracted to little butterflies. You could
Skippers
use
and things
it,
like that,
yeah,
yeah.
you could use it in pots, or you could use it as like a lawn alternative and plant it in mass.
Okay. Well, we have another specimen of that, and it's really beautiful. And the garden, I would say the studio actually is very fragrant right now because of the next plant, and that is the Texas kidney wood, which is a super little shrub or small tree here.
Right. You can trim it up to make it look more tree-like. It's also called bee brush, so you can guess
Bee
that.
brush, okay.
Those white, fragrant blooms are just irresistible to bees. It's also the larval source for the dog-faced butterfly.
Okay.
It's a great one. It's hard as nails.
Yeah, well, and really, if you want a tough little plant for a landscape that will survive the drought, there's nothing better than the Texas kidney wood. And for those who love fragrance in the garden, really, folks, this is about as good as it gets, I think.
I love it.
Yeah, I love this plant too, absolutely. And then right next to it is a form of Acanthus that I never knew existed. This is
Yeah.
everybody knows the flame Acanthus.
Exactly.
Tough as nails, wonderful plant.
The red flame Anise acanthus attracts hummingbirds, but this is a pink variety that blooms before the leaves come out in spring.
Okay.
It also is very attractive to hummingbirds, butterflies, and moths.
Okay, so a pink color, so that'll be different.
Right.
And also it blooms on bare wood?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it has a little bit more of an arching habit. The flame red is a little bit more upright.
Right, right. Well, that sounds like it would be very pretty. Our next plant is, I love the color of this, I have to say, and I love the foliage on standing cypress is the plant. And this is one that you can seed out, right?
Right. Fall is a great time to seed out the standing cypress. It's a biennial, so the first year you're going to get those ferny rosettes, and then the second year it's going to shoot up this spike of flowers that's just incredible.
Yeah.
Covered in these red tubular flowers that hummingbirds love.
Yeah, it's designed for a hummingbird, obviously.
Yes. It's best to probably plant them in mass because that's when they really stand out.
Yeah, and they can get quite tall.
They can reach almost 6 feet tall.
I've seen a few in the wild that way, and it's quite stunning to see them when they get that big. Again, this is one for a sunny spot and a wide range of soil conditions, I think.
Well-drained soils. It is a hill country native, but sunny spots.
Sunny spots, okay. Well, everybody loves blue and purples in the garden, and the Salvia azurea is our next plant, and this is pitcher sage, is that correct?
It's also called pitcher sage.
Okay.
Yep.
Love the color on this.
I love it too. It is a Texas native. It will bloom off and on through the spring and summer, but really it pushes its best blooms, in my opinion, in the fall.
A lot of salvias do, don't you think? Yeah.
This is one that kind of grows a little bit leggy to start with, so you're going to probably want to cut it back a couple times just to keep it nice and dense.
Yeah, and I like to do that with my salvias generally.
Yeah.
But this one, I can tell it is a little looser than like the Greg Eye or something like that. But that color is irreplaceable. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Bees love it.
So it's a bee pollinating plant. It doesn't surprise me. Next to it is the little silver dahlia. And this is a plant that a lot of folks really, really love to use in rock gardens and really hot exposed situations.
It's perfect for that situation. It's also native. You can see that it forms a dense mat. It can be trailing over a rock ledge. It has those purple flowers that bloom from spring to summer. It's very attractive to small butterflies and bees.
Okay. And it looks great in a container. I will say, one year, one of my favorite planting, I had one of those blue Asian pots with this trailing down the side and some tall,
Great contrast.
Tall yellow flower things in there as well. It really looked awesome. You know, the Callilophus and this together in a blue pot. I mean, just warning you.
It's a great option to use here, especially in Texas. It could be used as a lawn alternative as well.
A lawn alternative for small spaces, it would work really great. And just enough time for us to talk about a great little plant that's very utilitarian, that's frog fruit.
A lot of people come into the nursery and they look at it and they think, oh, that's that weed that's growing in my lawn. But it's a bulletproof ground cover that can handle dry and wet conditions. It blooms all summer into the fall. Bees and butterflies are attracted to it. It's the larval source for the fan crescent spot butterfly, as well as the white peacock and the buckeye butterfly.
Well, frog fruit. Good thing for folks to remember, widely adapted and tough as nails. So those are good qualities to have.
Great qualities for Texas.
All right. Well, Crystal, again from Far South Nursery, you're a wholesale operation, but people can find these plants or ask for them in any local nursery, right?
Or send your landscaper our way.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you so much for being on Central Texas
Thank you
Gardener.
for having me.
Oh, no, it's been a pleasure. And coming up next is our friend Daphne.
Hi, I'm Daphne Richards. Our question this week comes from Mary, who wants to know about watering shrubs and large rose bushes. Do you water them at the drip line, the same as is recommended for trees? Well, the answer is yes, Mary. Although shrubs and even smaller plants do not have the same root mass as larger trees, the roots still grow in a similar fashion, away from the trunk or main stem. The larger the plant, the further away from the trunk the feeding roots will be. These roots are newer and covered in root hairs, which are responsible for water and nutrient uptake by the plant. Older, often woody roots don't have any root hairs, and so they don't take up any water. With shrubs and smaller plants, the drip line won't be anywhere near as far away from the trunk as it is with a tree. So I generally water my shrubs all around the base and up to about half the height of the plant away. So if a shrub is 6 feet tall, watering out to at least 3 to 4 feet from the trunk would be sufficient. A slow, thorough soaking of the soil is much better than a quick burst of water. You're after deep moisture for the plant to encourage those roots to grow nice and deep so that it will have access to a larger soil profile. The deeper you go, the cooler the soil is and the more protective it is from the environment. So it holds on to the water longer. In the hottest part of the summer, if we're getting no rain, established shrubs may need water once a week, but usually not more than that, as long as you water properly. Our plant this week is white boneset, Ageratina havanensis, also known as fragrant mistflower, or its more exciting name, Havana snakeroot. A shrubby plant that may get up to 6 feet tall, boneset is covered in highly fragrant, fuzzy white blooms from fall through early winter. These flowers are a magnet for hummingbirds, butterflies, and other insects, since they're a rare source of late-season nectar and pollen. Boneset normally grows to about 2 feet tall and wide. It's native to rocky limestone areas where the soil holds very little water, so it prefers good drainage. But it also easily tolerates poorly drained soils as long as you don't overwater it. It will also tolerate shady areas, but will perform better in the full bright sun. Once blooming starts to slow down with the onset of winter, give boneset a good heavy shearing to encourage denser new growth in the spring, and then you'll have more profuse blooms next fall. If you don't shear the plant, blooming will be very sparse since boneset only produces flowers on new wood. This plant requires very little water once it's established, and it's a great addition to any Central Texas landscape. To do in your garden this week, it's time to start watching for cabbage loopers. Spray with BT as soon as you see those loopers, and you should be able to get them under control pretty quickly. There's also still time to plant cool season herbs such as catnip, chamomile, borage, fennel, dill, and winter savory. We'd love to hear from you, so please visit klru.org/ctg to send us your pictures or plants from your garden.
Thanks, Daphne. Now let's check in with Trisha Shirey for Backyard Basics.
One of the things I love about the fall planting season is the variety of herbs and vegetables that we can plant. It's a lot of things that we can't grow in the rest of the year, like cilantro. Now, I'm always unhappy to see my basil go, but I plant cilantro where the basil was in the garden. And if you've ever tried cilantro in the spring, you know it's just not successful. It goes to seed immediately. So when you're looking for cilantro in 4-inch pots, it is often very crowded in the pots. If you'll look at this pot, you can see there's probably 8 or 10 or more cilantro plants. And if you were to plant that just like it is, it's going to do okay for a while, but then the plants are going to start to struggle and probably die. And if you've had trouble growing cilantro in the past, that might be why. Now this plant is kind of small, so it would be rather easy to take it apart and divide it and separate it. This plant, however, is quite crowded, and the plant is quite a bit larger, so it looks like it would be a better buy, but really it's going to be a struggle for that plant to survive just like it is. So what I would do is I'd plant it, and once it's planted, let it grow for a little bit, but as it's growing, I would take out 1 or 2 of these extra plants all the way down to the base. You could take that into the kitchen and cook with it, but that way this plant is going to eventually just have 1 or 2 at one place, and it will survive and do much better that way. Now another plant that is fabulous to get started in the cool season is parsley. Both the curl parsley and the Italian flatleaf parsley are great to start in this cool season and get established. Again, this plant is multiple plants in one pot. There are many, many plants in there, and this one is a little bit further along. The roots are extending out from the pot a little bit, so again, I might go in and cut some of those all the way down to the base. This one, however, is fairly crowded, but of much smaller plants. It's not, it doesn't have a root system that's winding around and twisting around too much, so that could be teased apart and separated into probably 8 or 10 different parsley plants. Same thing here with this fennel. Now this is really, really crowded. I know there's at least 20 plants there. And so to divide those, just gently squeeze the pot, pull it out. You see the roots are kind of twisting around, so just separate those out, sort those out, and you'll just gently pull it apart. It's best to do with this when the soil is a bit damp, and tear it apart, and then you can take these little divisions that you've got, and you might have 2 or 3 plants in each division, and pot those up in another pot, let them sit for a week or so for the roots to heal and repair, and or you could also put them in the garden and just protect them with a little bit of shade cloth. Now again, this is a dill that, and I don't mind having extra fennel because it's a great butterfly plant. And so the larvae of the swallowtail butterflies come in and feed on the fennel all the time. In fact, I take the larvae of the swallowtails off of my dill and my parsley and put them on the fennel, so the fennel can be their host plant. This is dill that's a little bit stretched, a little bit long, so that would not be my best choice. I prefer this dill, and it's going to be easy to separate and divide. Also look for roots that are really twisting and winding around like that. Make sure you're pulling them out and really separate them before you plant them. Now even with some vegetables, you'll get really crowded pots. This little arugula plant has 5 plants in the pot. That's all the arugula that I ever plant. That's plenty of arugula for me. So I'll separate this out into 5 plants and separate them about 12 inches apart because it gets big. Now this little pot of spinach has a lot of nice healthy little plants, but there's a lot of spinach in this one little pot. That needs to be separated before it goes in the ground. When you're pulling these apart and separating them, you have to give them a little bit of protection from sun and from wind so that they're not stressed. And so the way I do that is with my trusty rebar garden hoops, and I use this lightweight row cover that gives them a little bit of wind and sun protection. And I started using the bulldog clips from your office supply store to hold that row cover on. You can also use the little spring clamps too. And you can use these same hoops for deer netting. You can also use the same hoops for a heavier weight row cover for winter protection when your plants are going to be in danger of freezing. You can use the heavier weight row cover. So all of these tips will get you off to a great start with your fall garden. For Backyard Basics, I'm Trisha Shirey. Thanks for watching.
Find out more at klru.org/CTG and be sure to follow us on Facebook. Next week, check out understory trees and shrubs to attract wildlife. Until then, I'll see you in the garden.
To learn about today's program, watch online and follow CTG's blog. Check out klru.org/CTG.
Support for Central Texas Gardener comes from GeoGrowers, offering custom soil blends for lawns, gardens, xeriscaping, and organic landscaping supplies. More information at geogrowers.net.